Hi everyone, it's Lisa Spangler here with a video for Hero Arts. Today I'm going to be sharing some techniques for creating chalkboard backgrounds using a new stamp that came out in the 2013 Holiday and Stamp Your Story catalog. So it all started out with this card that I made using regular old chalk. I'm just in love with the whole chalkboard trend right now, and so I just had to try to make a card with a chalkboard background. And then we thought to ourselves, hey, this would make a really great stamp. So that's how the chalk background was born. This is CG623, and I'm going to be sharing a bunch of different ways that you can use this stamp. It may not look like much right here, but you can make a background that's even better than plain old chalk. So this stamp was designed to be used with white ink on black paper, but I thought I'd start off by showing how it looks when you stamp it in black on white paper, and as you can see, it's not very impressive and it doesn't look very much like chalk. So here is the black paper from Hero. This is from the Hero Hues line, and like the other Hero Hues note cards, it is white inside, and this makes it really great because then you have a place to stamp a message or to write on the inside of your card. And here are the inks that we're going to be using. These are the three white inks from Hero Arts. First, I started off trying the Hero Hues Snow chalk ink, and I thought that was kind of funny because it is a chalk ink, but this one is a dye-based ink and it has a felt pad, as you can see here, and this one was my least favorite. It looks kind of cool, but it's really subtle. Here I stamped it 2 times and it's still not that vibrant compared to some of the other ones. Like this dye ink, this is a white dye ink from the Memories line, and as you can see here, you can see a lot more of the detail, and it picks up a lot more of the things, and here it even lets you do some kind of creative things where you can buff the ink because it doesn't dry quite as fast as the chalk ink. But my favorite ink to use for this technique is the Unicorn. This is a pigment ink and it has a foam pad, and there's so many opportunities for creating things. Here I rub some of the ink off with a baby wipe. You can stamp it multiple times. You can wipe a lot of it off and not leave any edges. There's just so many things you can do. That's when I stamped it twice. So here is the stamp. And my first tip I wanted to share with you is that I like to keep it on the carrier sheet, and I leave a nice edge here so that I have a place to hold it as I'm inking it up with the Unicorn ink, because if you've worked with pigment ink before, you'll know it's really messy. And no matter what ink you use, you're going to want to use a rubbing, like a swiping motion to apply the ink. Otherwise, you'll get those lines like that from the edge of the pad. So here I'm just kind of swiping it back and forth, and I'll just keep going over the whole stamp like this, adding ink, and keep swiping it. And I found with the pigment ink here, with the Unicorn, I like to even twist the ink pad a little bit on the stamp and then kind of like rub the ink in a little bit more. And this kind of gives you those eraser lines, like where someone would have erased the chalkboard and left a little line from the eraser. So this looks pretty good. It looks good to go. So here's a piece of the Hero Hues black layering paper that I've cut. And I'm going to take a piece of just regular scrap paper here and then press evenly all over the stamp, making sure that I get all the edges and kind of press it everywhere evenly. Then I'm going to use a little trick that I learned from the fabulous Julie Ebersole, and that is to take a pair of tweezers like these are craft tweezers, and then lift up a corner to flip it over, because this way I don't get my fingerprints in the ink, because like I said, this is pigment ink. Oh, and there I got my finger in it, but I can show you a little trick for that too. So if you do get your fingers in the ink before it's dried, then you can just take a dry cloth. Here I just have an old dish rag, and just rub the cardstock, and this will give you kind of a really kind of more subtle, muted look, which is also pretty cool by itself. And one other tip I wanted to share is when I'm working with the unicorn ink, you can leave the ink here. You don't have to clean it off in between each stamping. And it actually even works better when you keep adding ink and wiping it on there and then stamping and then trying again. And here I'm going to take, here you can see I'm adding a lot of ink. I'm like really pressing it on there. Let me wipe some of this off of my craft sheet so I don't get my fingers in that. And then I'm going to take the same card that we already stamped and stamp it again. And this is one thing I found out is if you don't like how it first comes out, just kind of buff it and then stamp it again, and it just keeps getting better and better. As you can see here, doesn't that look cool? At this time I didn't touch my fingers to it. So since this is pigment ink, it's going to take a little bit more time to dry, but you can use a heat gun if you like, or sorry, a heat tool to go ahead and speed the process along. So now I'm going to re-ink the same stamp again, and I wanted to share one last little technique. So after I get it all inked up here, I'm going to take a baby wipe. This is just a damp baby wipe. And I'm going to wipe out a section here in the middle. And this will be a perfect place to add a message later. So I'm just wiping that out. And I wanted to mention that one thing I like to do when I have the background out and inked up and everything is I like to just make a whole bunch of these backgrounds and then go ahead and add things to them later. It just seems more fun that way. So here you go. Isn't that cool how there's that area there that's perfect for adding a message? So finally I wanted to share some cards that I made with all of my backgrounds. So first there's a clean and simple card. This one features some of the new stamps that I actually got to design for Hero Arts. I still can't believe that I got to design these. So this is the Lisa's parentheses and arrows. This is where the little parentheses with the leaves come from, and the thanks. And here you can see the background. This one I actually used the dye white memories ink along with some of the unicorn ink. So I used 2 inks on this one. Okay, and then for this next card, I use the same ink, but I use it in different ways. So first I did my chalk background, and I kind of buffed out an area with a dry paper towel for where the Merry Christmas was. And then I used the inks 2 different ways. So first I stamped the pen and ink fur with white unicorn ink. And then I stamped the Merry Christmas again in unicorn, but then this time I heat embossed it with white embossing powder. And I just thought that was kind of a fun contrast between the chalk background and the embossing. So my final card has 2 different new techniques on it. First, the background. It's a green chalkboard this time. So I used a Hero Arts Pine note card and the white unicorn ink. Then I cleaned off the chalkboard background stamp and I inked up the Merry Christmas in black, and then I kissed the Merry Christmas stamp to the chalk background stamp to give the Merry Christmas that fun chalkboard texture. And I really, really love how this one came out, and I'm sure I'm going to be playing with this technique more. So thanks so much for watching. Bye!